Hello and welcome to this solo episode of the Men's Mysteries podcast, where today I'm going to be talking about the concept of presence as it relates to relationships, and specifically romantic relationships. One of the things that I find is that there's a lot of focus on polarity and on men and women holding their respective poles, but what I've discovered is that it's not so much about polarity as it's about presence and awareness in the way that we show up. And we're going to be exploring that today. Now, if you're on YouTube, please go ahead and like and comment and subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're on the Men's Mystery Substack, go ahead and share, restack, and of course subscribe, so that you can get more notifications when I do these videos. So what is it I mean by this concept of presence versus polarity? Well, there's a lot of polarity coaches out there, and one of the things that they do is they tend to focus on the idea of like the masculine and the feminine pole. You know, men holding the masculine and women holding the feminine pole, and that when this occurs, there is this connection between the masculine and the feminine, where the feminine is able to relax more into the masculine, and the masculine creates the container. And I mean, I've done some exploration of some of these different perspectives and found it to be somewhat helpful. And yet at the same time, what I've been thinking about a lot lately is, what is the difference that is really occurring here? What is really happening? And it's interesting because, of course, I have a relationship with somebody, and she said to me recently that what struck her about me was my ability to be present with her, that's what she really craved. It was that feeling of presence, that feeling of awareness, that sense that I was totally focused on her and the way that she was signaling to me, what she was indicating to me, what she was sharing with me. And I found that to be rather fascinating. And I've had the fortune of in the last half a year to have gone to two different events where I got to witness men and women and be part of men and women doing their work together. And it was interesting to note that, the way that we all showed up with each other really boiled down to presence. Was I able to fully show up in presence with this person? Was I able to fully show up in a state of awareness? Was I able to fully connect with this person? Was this person able to fully connect with me? This was the kind of the what stood out to me about the entire experience in each case. And it wasn't that there wasn't some awareness of masculinity or femininity at work. There certainly was. But rather, how does each person show up with presence and awareness? How do I show up as a fully present man? How do you show up as a fully present woman? Is that something that's inherent in the energies that we have, or is this really about a matter of presence? And what I've found is that the more present I am with myself, the more I'm able to show up for other people. And so as I have a saying that I've applied to this in relationship is, the more I show up with myself, the more I show up for myself, the more I'm able to show up for other people. When I'm able to show up for other people, then I am able to show up for myself. And I really, if I'm not showing up for other people, I'm probably not showing up for myself either. And I think this is a very relevant point, because a lot of times when we are trying to be in relationship with other people, we have to also take a look at our relationship with ourselves. For me, when I look at the previous relationships that I've been in, one of the points that I really have to honestly acknowledge and own is how much I didn't show up for myself, and as a result, I wasn't fully showing up for those other people. And not that I wasn't trying to make an effort. I mean, there were cases where I was definitely doing that, but part of what stood out to me about that effort was that a lot of times I was so focused on trying to show up for them, I wasn't really showing up for myself. And then there would be resentment and anger. Or I'd be trying to show up for them, but then I would sabotage it because there was that part of me that was like, hey, like, you're not showing up for you. And so that part would kind of come in and say, well, I need you to focus on me now. And it wasn't that I didn't have a legitimate reason to do that. I fully did. But it was significant to me that in not fully showing up for those other people at that point, because I was trying to show up for myself, that what was happening is that I wasn't communicating very well. So one of the things I did after my most recent breakup was I spent a significant amount of time just focusing in on my relationship with myself and going and doing some very intensive initiatory experiences, which I've talked about. And each of these experiences was really designed to help me heal my wound around the feminine. But what was telling for me is that not only was it helping me heal my wound around the feminine, but it was also helping me heal my wound with myself. And I started focusing on getting into a better relationship with me. And as a result, I found that I was able to show up more because I had presence with myself. And by being present and aware of myself, I could check in and then show up and be present and aware with other people. And what I notice about the people that are most present with other people in their lives is that they're also really present with themselves. So if you find yourself in a place where you're kind of like, I'm not fully connecting with this person, that's when it's probably an indicator that you need to check in with yourself. How are you being present with yourself? How are you showing up? What does that look like? So here's a model or a sample exercise that you could do is take a deep breath in. Start scanning your body. Start scanning your emotional awareness, your intellectual and creative and imaginative awareness, and your spiritual awareness. Where do you feel off with yourself? Where do you feel out of alignment? The key here is that the more you show up with yourself and the more you kind of tap into yourself and start to really connect with what's going on with you, the more easily it is for you to show up with other people. But when you don't do that, when there's some kind of disconnect, it creates a fundamental disconnect on every level, including the relational level with other people. So we want presence. And I'll use an example from my own life of where I had a person who told me I was a really good listener, and I would really listen to that person. But what I wasn't doing is I wasn't listening to myself. So even though I would take in what that person was sharing, I wasn't listening to myself. And then what would end up happening is at some point, that lack of listening would translate over into the relationship itself. And it created a very dysfunctional relationship. I wasn't listening to myself. And so even though I seemed to be listening to that person, I really wasn't listening to that person. I thought I was. That person thought I was. But there was a disconnect. And I find it interesting at the same time that what I've discovered time and again is that, I think this is true, is we attract people at the same level that we are at, emotionally, relationally, etc. Sometimes, we're with somebody and we discover like a certain level of disconnect in the relationship. And it really is an indicator that there's a disconnect as much with myself as it is with the other person. And this isn't a judgment. It's just it's a signal. There's a disconnect here. There's something where we're not fully aligning. And it doesn't mean we couldn't fully align. We could. It does mean there has to be some work. I remember at one point, I started to get the itch to date. It was like mid-fall. I wasn't really ready yet. And there was a person I started to date, kind of, sort of. And I realized shortly into it, I'm like, no, this isn't going to work. And she did as well. And it was interesting to realize that part of it on my end was, well, I need to really be present with like a truth that I don't want to have children. And this person had a kid. But I was, for a moment, abandoning myself in the possibility of a relationship, even though I didn't really want that. I let it go. I learned from it. It was a good experience. And this is kind of what I'm talking about in regards to the experiences that we have, that there can be times where we focus in on trying to make ourselves be something or to fit a mold that we think is what the other person wants, but we're not being honest with ourselves, and so we're not being honest with them. And there's a lack of alignment. Now, if we are being fully present with ourselves, we're going to own that and recognize it, and we're going to put a stop, and we're going to say, like, look, this either isn't working, or look, there's something where we need to calibrate. We need to recalibrate here, and figure out like what we both really want, and be willing to accept that what we want may not fully fit, may not be the right fit, and that's okay, that there's no judgment here. Rather, we can celebrate and welcome where we come into connection with each other, and then let that go. Let go of what doesn't fit, and focus on like what does fit. It could be a really good friendship. It could be something else. And I think this is one of the things that occurs a lot of times when we look at relationships, is that when people are quote unquote looking to get into a relationship, they're usually focused on a very specific outcome. Instead of saying, well, what could the relationship be? Like, get curious about the relationship. What could it be? Let's open ourselves up to discovery. Does it have to be this way? Or could it be some other way? Does it, for example, have to be a romantic relationship? Or could it be a friendship? I think one of the most powerful experiences that I had was that there were a few different potential relationships that I walked away from. Because I realized that that wasn't what I really wanted with that person, or that person didn't really want that with me, and that we could just be friends instead. And that was actually really healthy and good. It was powerful. I can be friends with you. I can connect with you this way. I can give myself to you this way. Oh, here we are. This is real. When I look at presence isn't just like, here I am, I'm here right now with you, paying full attention to, this is what I think most people think of presence as. No, presence is, I'm fully embodied and present and aware of myself. I'm fully embodied and present and aware with my environment, and I'm fully embodied and present and aware with you. It's all of those different levels. It's paying attention to everything that comes in without judgment. Without the need to, be critical. Instead, it's an acknowledgement of what things are, and an acceptance, and then curiosity and discovery. But also being willing to let go of attachments to outcome. It doesn't have to be this way. So when I think about connecting with somebody, I connect with presence. I connect with that full state of awareness and that beingness. I am in beingness with you. I am present with you. I am aware with you. We are together in whatever form that takes, without it having to be one thing that we think it ought to be. Instead, we can just simply let it be what it is. And this can be a really powerful form of practice, But also that beingness, that presence, that awareness, it can be a powerful way of being. And the more I cultivate this with myself, the more I kind of focus in on learning how to be present with myself, the more present I am with other people. So when you look at relationships, instead of focusing on the polarity piece, am I in my masculine? Is she in her feminine? Ask yourself, am I in my presence? Am I present with this person? Is she present with herself? Or if it's another man, for example, am I present with this other man? Is this man present with me? Or am I present with these people? Here I am in a group. Am I fully present? Am I fully in connection? Or is there some part of me that's holding back? Well, whatever the part that is that's holding back, there's something there to explore. There's something to discover. Because that's what's also preventing me from being fully in with those people. And this is how we find a sense of mutuality, and that mutuality can land in different ways. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship at all. It could be a friendship. It could just be a casual, we're acquaintances. It could be anything. But we meet at a certain level, and that's where we're at, and we're present in that level with each other. If we can't even be present there, we're certainly not going to be able to be present with anything else that shows up. Take a moment and fully feel in to this experience right now. Become present with yourself. If you find yourself fidgeting, if you find yourself distracted, if you find yourself not fully here with me, there's something there for you to explore. Because if you're not fully here with me in this moment, probably not fully with anyone else, including yourself. And it's time to explore and get curious about that so you can change your relationship with yourself and therefore your relationship with other people. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.